Greetings. In John Urquhart's wonderful book, The Wonders of Prophecy, he's dealing with the decay, yet survival, of Egypt, in contradistinction to its neighbors, Babylon and Assyria. It's conquerors, superior military powers of the ancient world. Egypt's still around, but it's decayed to what was, when this book was written around the turn of the 20th century, in 1905 or so, a land of ruins which were becoming tourist attractions. He now talks about the character of its new masters, the death of 3,000 years of the pharaohs, the extinction of its native masters. What would be the character of its new masters? The character of its masters is first of all described in one clear, emphatic word: I will sell the land into the hand of the wicked. That's Ezekiel 30, verse 12. It may be noticed in passing that the phrase, I will sell the land, denotes, in the language of Scripture, its unresisting surrender into the hand of an enemy. As slaves are sold into the hand of a master, so will they be sold into the hand of the wicked. The dominion foreshadowed is one of irresponsible unscrupulousness and ferocity. The slave has no rights, and the wicked has no mercy. It is strange to find that almost the very words of the prophecy have been unconsciously repeated by those who had weighed the condition of this unhappy country. Volney, for example, calls it, quote, the country of slavery and tyranny, unquote. And Malta Brun speaks of its character as the arbitrary sway of the ruffian masters of Egypt. Of Ali Bey, who reigned from 1766 to 1772, it has been said, like his predecessors, he considered Egypt as his private property, or life estate, and the natives as the livestock disposable at his pleasure. De Leon says of Abbas Pasha that he was arbitrary, rapacious, and cruel to the last degree. To show fully how strikingly these words, I will sell the land into the hand of the wicked, have been fulfilled, we should have to write the history of Egypt. The sum of its story in every period throughout all its changes, from the prophet's time to the present, is rightly told in those words alone. The land has been sold into the hand of the wicked. We name a few facts. The first governor of Egypt under the Roman Empire, Cornelius Gallus, was guilty of such extortion and oppression that he was disgraced and died by his own hand. A revolt was crushed by Diocletian in 286 with remorseless severity. Alexandria surrendered at discretion, but was shown no mercy. Many thousands of the citizens perished in a promiscuous slaughter, and there were few obnoxious persons of Egypt who escaped the sentence of death, or at least exile. The fate of Busiris and Copts was still more melancholy than that of Alexandria. Those proud cities, the former distinguished by its antiquity, the latter enriched by the passage of the Indian trade, were utterly destroyed by the arms and by the severe order of Diocletian. The oppression of the Greek Empire became so intolerable to the Egyptians that the Arabs, burning though they were with the first fervor of their fierce and intolerant fanaticism, were everywhere hailed by them as deliverers. For a short time it seemed as if a change had been made for the better, but it was impossible that the Christianity of Egypt and the Mohammedanism of its new lords could long share the same land in peace. The Egyptians, persecuted and oppressed, rose in insurrection and were subdued with immense bloodshed. The persecution was continued with circumstances of grosser outrage. A special tax was imposed upon the monks, and as each one paid the tax, he was branded upon the hand. Any monk who was afterwards unable to show this barbarous tax receipt had his hand cut off. Subsequently, every Copt had his hand similarly branded. The whole community was so oppressed that another rebellion was the result, which, like the former, was crushed and followed by another terrible persecution. The Copts were compelled to wear a distinguishing dress, and their proud spirits were borne down under other marks of shame. About the end of the 10th century, they were made to wear, suspended from their necks, a wooden cross of 5 pounds weight, and to clothed in deep black, a color peculiarly odious to the Egyptian Mohammedans. In the beginning of the 14th century, they were so overwhelmed by Muslim hatred that multitudes of them, wearied of a hopeless struggle, embraced Mohammedanism. The small remnant who still clung to Christianity, though now less oppressed, pay a heavier tribute than is imposed upon their Mohammedan countrymen. But those who apostatized did not escape from their evil destiny by the simple expedient of changing their religion. They form by far the largest portion of the fellahin, the cultivators of the soil, and these the hand of the wicked has long held in its savage grip. How is agriculture to improve? Miss Martineau asks, under such arrangements as the following. The cultivator undertakes to till a certain quantity of land, all the land, it is understood being the Pasha's property, except such as he pensions or gratifies certain parties with. The cultivator engages, in return for being furnished with all that is needed for its cultivation, to hand over a certain amount in proportion to the produce after harvest. He receives, among other requisites, an order for a good and sufficient quantity of seed corn from the government granary. When he presents the order, the great official gentleman at the granary directs a subordinate officer to supply the applicant with 3/4 of the specified quantity, he retaining the other quarter for his own fee. The second officer subtracts a second quarter, and the cultivator sows his field with half the proper seed. Wilkinson found, as the result of a careful calculation, that in the most favorable circumstances, the peasant has had only 2 2/5 farthings a day on which to support himself and his family. The consequence is that to keep themselves from actual starvation, the peasants have to convey grain secretly from the fields to their houses, and have thus, while laboring with their hands most diligently, to secure their bread by theft. It is impossible to extort the enormous taxes which the poor fellahin have to pay without the torture of the bastinado, or what an apologist for the government of Ismail Pasha gaily calls stick logic. But it is not government oppression alone which shows how terribly true are the words, the hand of the wicked, as a description of the power which holds the unhappy country. The land groans under the ravages of a whole army of plunderers. Every varies is enriched by the spoliation of the peasant, from the Mamor to the Muscadem, or beadle, of the lowest governor. Lane says it would be scarcely possible for them, that is the peasants, to suffer more and live. We know how unenviable is the condition of the Christian peasant under Turkish rule, but comparing him with the fellah of Egypt, Sir George Campbell says, if the Bulgarian were content to be a political slave and to submit to occasional outrage, he might have been in many respects tolerably well-to-do. Far otherwise is the lot of the Egyptian fellah. The taxation is enormously higher, the methods of squeezing more severe, the personal treatment more uniformly degrading. The bastinado and the corvée are in full force. If a man has anything, he dare not show it, and the very beginnings of material improvement are thus cut off to the fellah. The Right Honorable S. Cave, who was sent out by the government to inquire into the Egyptian finances, endeavors in his report, presented in 1876, to account for the corruption which pervades the whole administration. From the pashas downwards, he says, every office is a tenancy at will, and experience shows that while dishonesty goes wholly or partially unpunished, independence of thought and action, resolution to do one's duty and to resist the peculation and neglect which pervade every department, give rise to intrigues which, sooner or later, bring about the downfall of honest officials. Lots more next time on I Will Sell the Land into the Hand of the Wicked, the terrible impress of that hand is visible everywhere, Urquhart says. I'll put in a link to Genesis chapter 9. There's a few verses there, 3 actually, at the end of chapter 9 of Genesis, which tell the entire history of the world. And they're amazingly neglected. So check this video out where we explore just the sons of Noah prophecy, which leads to, of course, chapter 10 in Genesis, the 70 nations which descend from the families of the 3 sons of Noah. See you next time.